It is my privilege and absolute joy to serve as the Director of Hope for the Future. We are, as you know, a charity which specialises in researching the very best techniques for lobbying politicians here in the UK on climate change. And we train hundreds of campaigners each year. We work with many of the major NGOs working on climate change as well. How did it all begin? One very instrumental experience was an absolutely disastrous meeting that I had with Nick Clegg many years ago. It was just after the 2015 election when he was feeling very sorry for himself and his party, and I wanted to go and talk to him about climate change. And we had about 3 minutes, and then we had this great photo, and then we were done. And we didn't see eye to eye. And I started speaking to other campaigners and saying, what's your experience with MPs? And saying, well, I can't seem to get a meeting, or they talk the whole way through, or they seem very defensive, or they say all the right things, but then they can't actually pin them down to do something. And we did a survey with the Climate Coalition that found that only a third of people that went to see their MP actually got their MP to go on and do something. So we drew from lots of different disciplines to find an approach that could overcome some of these challenges. And we trialled it with 50 different MPs, and we found that it was very effective. And if I could take the last 5 years of research and hard graft and blood, sweat and tears into one slide, what we found was something very simple. Good lobbying is about finding common ground and building really good relationships. You know what you want to achieve as a campaigner. You research the MP or the local councillor very, very carefully to find out what their interests are, what gets them out of bed in the morning, and you tailor it to them. And you start to build a strong working relationship, and because you build trust, you can ask for increasingly ambitious asks, and that's what we've seen time and time again. I want to share with you some examples. I said in our application that we have a 100% success rate in securing tangible outcomes from every MP that we engage. What does this look like? I've given myself 10 seconds per example. Here we go. Election pledges. This is Margaret Greenwood, and she committed to campaigning to divest Parliament from fossil fuels as a key election pledge. Campaign signatories. This is an event in Glyn Davies' constituency, and he initially refused to sign the letter calling for net zero because he was a minister, and then he went on to sign following a meeting with us. Contribution to debates. Alex Chalk thought the Conservative Party was doing everything they could on climate change. After meeting with us, he challenged them on their change to feed-in tariffs. Support a parliamentary campaign. This is Steve Baker, who described himself as a petrol head. Am I right? Yes. He described himself as a petrol head, but he was the one that supported Bill Wiggins' bill for electric vehicles infrastructure across the UK. Submitting parliamentary questions, climate skeptic Philip Davies, and he submitted 4 climate-related questions, and they were useful. Contacts with stakeholders. Guto Baird put his constituent and Hope for the Future in touch with 5 all-party parliamentary groups related to climate change. That was very helpful for us as well. Funding. Nigel Evans, very forthcoming in helping Hope for the Future to find some funding to go international. Right to all meet ministers. Greg Clark, Minister for Base, he wrote a letter again in support of net zero to the Minister for Clean Growth, Claire Perry. Contribution to media. Derek Thomas, Conservative MP, he wrote an excellent climate change article in the Conservative Party, one of the key Conservative Party newspapers. Supporting a local business. This is Andrew Mitchell having his photo taken with the Royal Mail's latest fleet of low carbon delivery service. And finally, and I think probably one of the most important things that we do, we try to make MPs local climate advocates. So we try to, more than any of this stuff, transform the hearts and minds of MPs, because they will see what the opportunities are in Parliament. And what they really need to see is that this matters to their constituents, and they need to understand how this matters to them personally as an individual, and it fits into their worldview. Thank you. So how do we do this? We do school workshops. Never had an MP turn down a school workshop. We do site visits to community energy projects, and we do local events. This is 175 people who turned up on a very cold Friday night to hear Joe Johnson talk about climate change. So this is what we have been doing. We work with 50 MPs a year. What do we want to do with funding from you all? Well, £20,000 would enable us to treble the number of MPs that we're working with. So it's currently 50, we want to work with 150 MPs. It costs us, on average, £200 per MP to deliver training to the constituent, help them develop a tailored lobbying strategy and follow up with them after the meeting to help them take that forwards. There are 650 MPs, you can do the maths. We want to reach every single MP. So if we were fortunate enough to be able to raise even more than 20,000, we can reach even more MPs. I would like to also say that we want to work strategically. At the moment, we just train people who come to us and say, tell us how to lobby our MP. 70% of people that we work with have never lobbied their MP before. We want to go out and find the people in marginal seats where we can have the biggest impact, and help them to lobby their MPs, so we can be a lot more strategic rather than just responding to need. Thank you from me, from our team. Here are some other ways to help us beyond financially, and I'm happy to take questions.